Okay, thank you all for joining us today. And we're going to get started in just a moment. I think we're letting the last few participants in and we'll get rolling. So hello and welcome to the Gerontological Society of America's Career Conversations Meets Grant Chats on NIA Small Business Resources to Support Innovation in Aging. I'm Dr. Patty Slatum. I'm a visiting scholar with the GSA and faculty with the Virginia Center on Aging at Virginia Commonwealth University. And before we begin today's program, I'd like to provide a few logistical considerations. Please keep your audio on mute during the event and submit your questions for the speaker and any resources that you have to share on the Zoom chat. We invite you to view the event in the Zoom speaker view. And this conversation grant chat is being recorded and will be available after the event on the GSA website, along with a handout of the slides from today's program. And today's session was planned by the GSA Career Conversations Workgroup and the GSA Grant Writing Workgroup. The Career Conversations Workgroup provides a forum for an exchange of ideas about issues and strategies to build a successful career in gerontology. And GSA's grant chats are designed to help you win grants through bolstering a broad range of grantsmanship skills for gerontologist researchers. So hence today's Career Conversation Meets Grant Chats. The goal of today's session is to share information about the NIA's Office of Strategic Extramural Programs, which manages both the training and small business programs at the NIA. The office provides guidance and funding opportunities for small businesses, as well as early career scientists to accelerate Alzheimer's and aging research. And this session is a follow-up to the Entrepreneurship and Innovation in Aging career conversation held in February. And if you were not able to attend that, you can access it on GSA's website. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. I'd like to introduce our Dr. Saroj Regmi, is the program officer in the Office of Strategic Extramural Programs at the National Institutes on Aging at NIH. The Office of Strategic Extramural Programs manages both training and small business programs at the NIA. The office provides guidance and funding opportunities for small businesses, as well as early career scientists to accelerate Alzheimer's and aging research. Since starting at NIA in 2020, Dr. Regmi has focused on exploring initiatives to train the next generation of scientist entrepreneurs. He manages the entrepreneurship-focused READY programs as well as the K-22 awards. And he holds a PhD from Dartmouth Medical School and completed his postdoc at the NIH. And he has a presentation to share with us, followed by a Q&A period. And we look forward to learning more about NIA's resources and programs to support entrepreneurs and innovators in aging. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Regmi, who will share his presentation.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Patty, and really nice to be here and talk to you all about the small business programs. Let me try and share my screen. Do you guys see the right screen or the one with the notes?
We see the notes right now.
Okay, swap. This always happens. Okay, well, thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm really excited to talk at this panel. I'm a program officer at the NIA, and I'll talk to you today about the small business programs at the NIA. So this figure here does a really good job of providing you with a snapshot of what our office does. We do a central coordination. So basically we administer all SBIR and SDTR awards at the NIA. We provide guidance. So we help applicants prepare for application, resubmission, and we also discuss various funding opportunities. We do a lot of outreach as well. So we attend conferences, workshops, and organize workshops and also talk with regional organizations, to raise awareness of the program. We identify emerging technology areas by developing targeted funding opportunities. And we also facilitate connections between our awardees as well as potential partners, whether they be partners within the NIH or whether they be partners outside. And we've also recently started providing entrepreneurship training and webinars. And we have a dedicated panel of entrepreneurs in residence that are here to provide guidance and pitch coaching to our funded companies. So the SBIR and SDTR are congressionally mandated programs. Each year, federal agencies that have an extramural research and development budgets that exceed 100 million are required to spend a certain percentage of that money on small businesses. In case of the SBIR program, that is 3.2%, and for the SCTR program, that's 0.45%. And so what that means is that, you know, the NIH for the fiscal year 2021 had a total of $1.2 billion funded to startups. And of that 1.2 billion, NIA basically had 132 million. And for this fiscal year, FY 2022, we will spend around 140 million to fund startups using these SBIR and SDTR mechanisms. And so, you know, the difference between SBIR and SCTR is that, you know, the SBIR program funds early stage small businesses seeking to commercialize life science technologies and services. And SCTR is a very similar program, but, you know, it allows a formal collaboration with a research institution such as universities. So, you know, the first question is, you know, why would anyone seek SBIR, SCTR funding? You know, and, you know, the idea is that there are a lot of really good benefits to it. It provides seed funding for really innovative technology development. It's not a loan, so you don't have to pay anything back. There's no repayment required. It is non-dilutive, so there's no impact on stock or shares. And this can be critical for a really early stage company because not only is it non-dilutive, but you also retain intellectual property rights. So all of the IP is yours. You're not signing anything away by, you know, getting money from the NIH. And if you successfully manage to get, you know, funding by going through the competitive peer review process at the NIH, you get recognition, verification, and visibility. A lot of SBIR funded companies have made really meaningful strides in terms of technology and commercialization. And because of that, SBIR funding allows you to attract additional support as well as additional funding opportunities as well. Now let's talk about eligibility. One thing that I really want to highlight here is that, you know, difference, you know, in terms of critical difference from a normal, you know, grant award, the SBIR SCTR award is made to the small business and not the individual. And it's really important to, you know, note that distinction. So in order to be eligible, you have to be a small business. It has to be a for-profit US business. There has to be 500 or fewer employees, including affiliates. But, you know, a lot of the times, majority of the companies that we fund have employees ranging from 2 to 50. It is quite rare that we would fund a company that has hundreds of employees. Given that, you know, we are a government organization, it is really important that the company must be owned by US individuals or companies, and it must be independently operated. In case of multiple venture capital operating companies, no single VC firm can own more than 50%. If it is a syndicate that, you know, owns more than 50% together, that still, you know, would mean that they're eligible. So let's talk about the critical differences between SBIR and SCTR. I mean, the name kind of gives it away. The SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. So this is an award to a small business to conduct innovative research. SCTR stands for Small Business Technology Transfer. So it is an award made to a small business so that they can collaborate with non-profit research institutions for technology transfer. So there's an IP agreement providing necessary IP rights for small business to carry out the R&D and commercialization. So SBIR permits research institution partners such as universities, whereas SCTR requires it. And in terms of, you know, outsourcing, small business can outsource 33% of a phase 1 activity and 50% of phase 2 activities using the SBIR grant mechanisms. But in terms of SCTR, 40% should be conducted by small, you know, business, 30% should be conducted by nonprofit research institution, and the rest of the 30%, there's leeway in terms of whether it can be, you know, it can, in terms of where it can be conducted, whether it be the small business or the nonprofit. And, you know, there's also a strict PD program director, principal investigator, PI, requirement. For SBIR, the PDPI must be primarily employed. And what that means is more than 50% by the small business. And for SDTR, there's no such requirement. A lot of the time, the PI will make at least 10% of the effort to the project, because for a lot of the SCTR, people affiliated with the universities are the ones applying. So there's no such strong stipulation in terms of work requirement. Congress has divided the funding mechanisms into these distinct phases, phase 1 and phase 2, and phase 2B. But this, it's really important to note that this is not to be, confused with, the clinical trial phase 1 and phase 2. Most of the SBIR, SCTR funding is preclinical research. Phase 1 is for discovery and feasibility. So we award up to 1 year of funding, and the awards are $300,000 total costs for aging related innovation. If you have a specific Alzheimer's related focus, then you may request up to $500,000. The goal here is to establish technical merit, feasibility, and potential for commercialization. Phase 2 is development of full R&D. So this is a 2-year award. You get up to $2 million, and you get up to $2.5 million for ADRD. It continues phase 1 R&D efforts, and it requires a commercialization plan. And so now you can combine a phase 1 and a phase 2 into what is called a fast track, wherein you submit one application and you can do both phase 1 and phase 2. If you're already ready for full R&D development, then you can apply to what is called a direct to phase 2. And then, there's also commercialization related pilot, which is funding for late stage R&D and technical assistance for commercialization. Phase 2B is a competing renewal, which, is a follow-on of the phase 2. So, if you look at all of these things, you can request up to $8 to $9 million per project. So there's a lot of, funding to be had using the SBIR SCTR mechanisms. At the NIA, SBIR and SDTR seeks innovative solutions to various unmet clinical needs and solutions that have significant commercial potential. These projects leverage expertise of the company founder and seek funding to produce feasibility data at phase 1 or conduct product-focused development at phase 2. We are specifically focused on Alzheimer's disease as well as related dementia, and so there's a special interest there in terms of prevention, diagnosis, treatment, care and caregiving, research and clinical tools, analytical tools, digital health, and novel devices. One thing to note when you're looking at applying is the time from application to award. It can take from 5 to 12 months, especially if you're required to resubmit. So you really need to be aware of the fact that it isn't while that it requires some time, given the fact that you submit an application and similar to other grant mechanisms, it goes to the Center for Scientific Review. There's evaluation, and then there's recommendation for funding depending on the availability of budget. There are 3 application cycles for the normal SBIR SCTR awards, September 5th, April 5th, and January 5th. And based on these deadlines, the earliest project start dates are 5 to 6 months later. So at the NIA, as I said earlier, we strategically fund innovations for Alzheimer's disease and related dementia, and age-related changes in brain, aging in place, age-related diseases and conditions, as well as research tools. And here I've highlighted some additional areas of interest. And if you look at the pie chart on the right, you will see our portfolio classification, and you will see that 32% of our portfolio companies that we fund are therapeutics. They're working on treatments of Alzheimer's disease. But there's also a really high percentage on sensors and monitoring technologies, supportive devices, digital and mobile health, research tools, imaging devices, as well as in vitro diagnostics. So we have a really broad portfolio, and the fact that we're National Institute on Aging, we're disease agnostic. So anything that affects the elderly, we're interested in. So these are some of the funding opportunity announcements. I've already talked about the budget limits, and so these are clickable links that I'll be happy to share in my slides later, so that you can look them up if you're interested. Here are some additional funding opportunities that are for late stage innovations. And so, as someone who's, a graduate student or a postdoc, or looking into academic grants, we always focus, on, this innovation, what could be theoretically possible. And it's really important to note that in case of an SBIR, SCTR grant, there's a lot of emphasis on commercialization. So it's very similar to an academic grant, but here the emphasis is on commercialization and being able to develop a product, and not, increasing scientific knowledge per se. I mean, that is important too, but you always have to keep the product in mind. And so if you're looking at a review criteria, you will see, similar review criteria as you would for an R1 or other grants. There is an, emphasis on significance, whether the product addresses an important problem, and whether there's commercial potential, whether there's a market for the proposed product. We also look at approach, where the designs and methods are well developed and appropriate, whether the problem areas are addressed, pitfalls, alternative approaches. We look at innovation as well as investigator. But like I said, the really important thing here to highlight is, commercialization, whether the company's business strategy is the one that has a high potential for success. And, if you're interested in applying, we highly recommend that you, compose a specific aims page and talk to NIA staff for feedback. And the way we think of the specific aims page is sort of your executive summary. And so it's sort of the first half to 2/3 of the page consists of your elevator pitch. Why is it meritorious? What's the technology or the prototype you're developing? What's the innovation that would represent? What's the unmet need? And what are the technical challenges that you hope to overcome? You will talk about the value proposition and the competition. You would, provide a little highlight of preliminary data. And you would talk about, how your product is relevant to the research and development. How your research and development is relevant to the mission of the NIA. And then you will spend, last 1/3 to 1/2 of the page talking about the specific aims that consists of key models, assays, and metrics, as well as quantitative performance milestones. Now that I've talked to you about, the general SBIR, SDTR application, I would also like to talk to you about, spend a couple of minutes talking to you about entrepreneurial training focused programs that we launched in 2021. It was approved for funding for multiple years, so it may be released again. The READY program, as we like to call it, we call it the READY umbrella, Research and Entrepreneurial Development Immersion. It consists of multiple funding opportunities, that are geared towards entrepreneurial training. And, I really want to highlight the fact that we've kept the definition of entrepreneurship here, at least under the READY program, really broad. So this may include, in some cases, science communication, but, consulting, drug discovery, business of science, science education, and healthcare, everything is allowed in terms of this really broad entrepreneurial development training program. So there are 4 funding opportunities and 3 programs. The first is a mentored entrepreneurial career development award, KO1 for the aficionados. This is an individual training award. So this is awarded to an individual. We provided $90,000 per year in salary and $50,000 per year in other program-related expenses. We also provided an R25. This was an Entrepreneurship Enhancement Award. This is for educational institutions as well as accelerators, $150,000 per year in direct costs. And finally, the last 2 were SBIR, SCTR, small businesses to hire early career scientists as principal investigators or program directors. And the idea here was that, early career scientists would be immersed into entrepreneurship using these mechanisms. The budget limits we had was $400,000 for a phase 1 and $2 million for a phase 2. So let me walk through each of these awards. So the READY KO1, the purpose of the KO1 award was to provide protected time between 3 to 5 years for a supervised career development experience leading to research independence. We wanted entrepreneurship training, but it had to be relevant to the mission of the NIA. Like I said, the definition here of entrepreneurship is broad, and this could also, depending on this really broad umbrella of entrepreneurship training, a number of activities could be proposed. It would require 2 mentors, a research mentor who would be a research leader with scientific expertise, and an entrepreneurship mentor who could be the head of the small business, an accelerator, or a tech transfer office. Like I said, $90,000 was the salary, $50,000 for support. There could be courses, internships with a startup, investment firms, and SBIR, SCTR grant writing could be considered part of the training. To be eligible, you had to have 2 years of postdoc and should not have received any major grant from the NIH. No prior R01s, POs. You had to be a citizen of the US, or you could be a non-citizen national or have been lawfully admitted for permanent residence by the time of award. We highly encouraged applications from individuals with underrepresented racial and ethnic backgrounds, as well as disabilities. Like I mentioned earlier, the award was for 3 to 5 years. The deadline was September 29th. And the review criteria was very similar to an SBI, to any other KO1 award. We're looking at candidate, the potential, appropriate prior training, commitment to entrepreneurial training. It needed a proper, formalized career development plan, so that we could look at contribution to success, whether it's, judge whether it was appropriate in its content, scope, phasing, as well as the duration. It required a research plan, mentor, and also environment. So that was the KO1 award. The second was an R25. The purpose here was to promote—
Dr. Regmi?
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is Patty. We did have a couple of questions specifically about the KO1. Sure. And thought maybe this might be a good time to answer them. One is, can you apply without an academic institution, just as an individual? And the other is about whether mid-career faculty are eligible.
Yes. So, the way we had stipulated it last year was that you would have to apply within 10 years of your terminal degree. So, if that worked, then, you would be eligible. And I want to highlight that, this is not active anymore, and it may be released again the next iteration, and it may change as well. But in terms of being eligible to apply without an academic institution, I think it would depend on the funding opportunity announcement. But at that time, that was not allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions, or should I continue with the R25?
I would continue with the R25, thanks.
Awesome, okay. So yeah, the R25, the goal here was to promote development of entrepreneurial education programs to broaden the skill set of grad students and postdocs in the field relevant to the mission of the NIA. The requisites were courses and workshops with a broad scope, depending on the broad definition of entrepreneurship that I used earlier. Important to note that diversity recruitment plan was required, and in terms of eligibility, educational institutions, nonprofits, for-profits, and even state governments were eligible, and we encouraged partnering with pre-existing NIH-funded resources that I've highlighted here. We also anticipated that NIH KO1 awardees would utilize some of these R25 funded programs. And I think this year will be the first time we will have awarded some of these R25 programs, and some of them might be of interest to participants here if they're thinking about entrepreneurial training. So like I said, the main focus was courses for skill development. This was intended for graduate students and postdocs, but we also felt that it was appropriate that it be offered to faculty and undergraduate. And applicants were encouraged to propose collaborations, with both scientific and business development, and also local institutions. In terms of the award, we would like to award up to five of them, $150,000 in direct costs annually for up to 5 years. And the review criteria again was focusing on significance, investigator, innovation approach, and the environment. Finally, the Ready SBIR SCTR, the purpose was to allow small business to support hiring a postdoc fellow or early career researchers as a PDPI. The emphasis was on entrepreneurial training, mentoring, and career development. Apart from the normal requisites of the SBIR SCTR award, which I went at great lengths earlier, this award required a specific career development plan wherein the applicant talked about the background and project fit, the plan for entrepreneurial training and career development, as well as mentoring plan, and we required a letter of support from a dedicated mentor. For eligibility, the PDPI had to be a postdoc fellow or an early stage investigator without a prior R1 funding with no more than 10 years of post-terminal degree. Other similarities were similar to that of an SBIR SDTR award. And like I said, this was up to $400,000 for a phase 1 or $2 million for a fast track. And in case of a fast track, it could go up to 5 years. And again, the emphasis here was on commercialization, but we also really considered the mentorship aspect here because we really wanted that entrepreneurial training, which is highlighted here. So, specific requirement for a career development plan that talked about the background of the PI in terms of entrepreneurship, whether the project was a good fit, considering the background of the PI, entrepreneurial training and career development plans, courses, internships, mentorship, etc., and mentoring plan, what mentoring activities would be performed. And it required a letter of support from the mentor. So these were the ready programs. And for the last couple minutes, I want to talk about a new and exciting program that we have recently launched at the NIA. This is an NIA Healthy Aging Challenge. And we're very excited about it. This is an NIA diversity-focused program. The goal here is to provide entrepreneurial training to applicants that have a great idea and to match them with mentors. So we're going to select up to 20 applicants that will be allowed to participate in an entrepreneurial bootcamp. They'll be paired with mentors so that they will be provided one-on-one mentorship. And out of these 20, we will select up to 5 of them for a cash prize of $60,000 each after they've participated in an entrepreneurial bootcamp. The emphasis of this bootcamp is to foster diversity and address health inequalities in NIA mission areas. So this is sort of the way it works. You submit a concise application. We will select up to 20 finalists who will receive coaching and mentorship, entrepreneurial bootcamp, as well as networking opportunities. And out of these finalists, we will select up to 5 winners who will get $60,000 of cash prize and coaching and mentorship, as well as encouragement to pursue SBIR SCTR application. If you're interested, please attend the pre-application webinar, which I've highlighted here. It's also, if you Google NIA Healthy Aging Challenge, you should find that as well, if you don't have access to that link. I've included some additional resources here that might be of use as you're thinking about applying to the SBIR SDTR programs. I really encourage you to visit our website, nia.nih.gov/SBIR. Follow us on Twitter so that you're always aware of new funding opportunities. Follow us on LinkedIn. Look at upcoming events and funding opportunities and join our mailing lists. I hope, once I share this slide, that this will be available to you. And if you have any questions, you can email niasmallbusiness@mail.nih.gov. With that, I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any other questions.
Thank you so much. Are there questions that anyone would like to ask about these programs or any other resources at NIA related to small businesses? One question I see in the chat is, will there be a recording available? And the answer is yes, and it will be on the GSA website. And we'll let you know when that is up, but it doesn't take very long. So yes, we will have that along with the handout of the slides from today. So I have a question while we're all thinking about what you've shared with us. I had the opportunity in my early career to apply for one of these type of awards in conjunction with a small business. Actually 2 small businesses, and bringing a technology that one business had outside of aging with another business that was inside, that was providing services to older adults, and then the university partner. And although we were not able to take advantage of the funding, we got a great score on our grant. And I think if we'd have resubmitted it, we would have been very close. But what I learned in that is that these partnerships and the amount of time it takes, it's lining all of that up to be successful. And I'm just curious what your experience is. Our group went on to seek funding outside of NIH because it was taking too long, right? And so I'm just curious what you all see with the kinds of applications you get in.
Yeah, definitely. I think, there is a lot of, emphasis on, this sort of forming a partnership. And a lot of the times what we've also seen is, non-academic applicants, they, often are, they're not very familiar with the NIH application process. So, having someone who's applied, and gone through the NIH application process, does help. What we've also seen a lot, at least with the NIA, is that, we find a lot of merit in the peer review process at the NIH. We often find that, folks that resubmit almost double their acceptance rate upon resubmission. So, we think, getting that, critical feedback from peer review and being able to address those comments, really helps not only the success, rate in terms of getting the SBIR funding, but also, success of their entrepreneurial, small business.
That was definitely our experience, that the feedback was very valuable. So
Great.
Going through the process and, the learning that took place between the partners just in getting ready to submit this type of an application was really valuable to the group. So I agree that there's benefits sometimes just even outside of whether and how money arrives, right? that was good.
Sure. And
I always encourage people to really think about whether this is something that's worthwhile, because it could be for multiple reasons. Yeah.
And to your point, I think, that's why, we've started offering these programs like READY, as well as, the diversity challenge, so that, we can, familiarize folks with the NIH and the application process and hopefully get them into the SBIR, SCTR pipeline and improve success. I think I see a hand raised.
Yes, would you like to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hello, yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Ayo I'm a postdoctoral fellow from UNC Chapel Hill. And I feel so torn between two paths right now, because, being a scientist is, so exciting. And then this entrepreneurial, looking at, of course, we need some of this in real life and for it to get started. And so how would you advise? So right now, postdoctoral fellowship, my next step is a care award to build, and I'm working on building an intervention for older adults in a home health care setting. And I'm hoping this could, potentially lead to something in terms of like projects, but this is still in the early baby phases. How do you reconcile that kind of like, yes, I still need a lot of work. It needs a lot of science to get that out there. But then with, the entrepreneurial part too, how do you merge those together? So, yeah. And as coming from my perspective as a young investigator, trying to figure out this whole world of research and trying to combine that, I want everything, but trying to get both worlds. Yeah.
Sure. No, that's a fair point. And I think it would really, what I like to highlight, is the fact that phase 1 SBIRs, you just need a proof of concept. We're not, formally, you're not required to have any preliminary data, but you have to have a strong reasoning behind the kind of project you're pursuing. And if you can convince the reviewers, then I think applying to the SBIR SDTR program is a great way to get non-dilutive funding and work on a startup. But the other thing I'd like to point out is, if you're unsure and if you'd like to get some sort of training, then a mechanism such as the KO1, the SBIR and the Entrepreneurial Ready KO1 might be an avenue as well for someone like you to pursue. I will also say that even for our phase 1 awardees, once you've been able to get successful funding from the SBIR program, we do have a lot of entrepreneurial training programs. There's an NIH specific I-Core program that NIA participates in, wherein you're able to do customer discovery and learn about business. There are also, device-specific entrepreneurial training programs. We have access to entrepreneurs in residence, and we often find, our offices realize that, just giving startups money and saying go out and do it, is not the most helpful way. So we think of ourselves as a little accelerator, and we're trying to provide more resources and more support so that the startups that we fund will be successful. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I have some notes written down here too. Thank you.
Other questions?
Can I ask a question that maybe isn't, maybe it's outside the scope of what you could actually address, but I'm wondering about when you have a relationship and a partnership between a business and a scientist, what have you seen, if you have, in terms of intellectual property rights and sort of thinking about the ownership of the technology that's developed? So like, for example, I have something that I'm, thinking about as producing for technology. I could probably find a business partner, but is this expected that the business really sort of owns this project? Okay.
Yeah, so, the idea is for the SBIR SCTR award, the award is being made to the small business, and the hope is that the business has a potential for commercialization. And what that means is that, they should have to, demonstrate that they are able to, develop further. And so, they would have to have some sort of IP involved. Yes. And the example you propose, we find a lot of that. We have often, awardees that, consist of someone who's doing the technological development and somebody else who's, an expert in the field, research field, and those kind of partnerships, work really well within the SBIR SCTR program.
Additional questions? Well, hearing no more questions now, I feel I'm going to give everybody a last call here. And then we will have the materials, like we said, from today available so that you'll be able to review them. And you now know a program officer that you can reach out to if you have questions, right? So this is an opportunity to bring our session today to a close. And I want to encourage everyone to consider whether this idea of becoming an entrepreneur is intriguing to you, and whether your interest might be a good fit with starting or joining with a business or partnering with a business. Take the opportunity to explore more fully the funding and training opportunities that are available through NIA that were shared in today's program, and maybe you'll find a path. And I also would ask you to join me in thanking Dr. Regmi for generously sharing his time, his expertise, and his perspectives with us today. And thank you to the work group members who planned the career conversation/grant chat. And thanks also to all of you who participated today with your questions and your comments. And of course, a big thank you to Gina Schoen from GSA staff for all of her behind the scenes coordination that really make these programs possible. We will be sending out a brief survey following this event for you to provide some feedback and to help us in planning future career conversations and grant chats. This is your chance to share topics that you would be interested in learning more about, and we will work with our programming groups, grant chats, and career conversations to try to make those a reality. And so thank you all for your time today. And with that, we'll close our session. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. Bye.